Good evening, everyone. First off, Happy New Year. I'm Sean Camacho. I am captain of HD6B, which I was told people wanted to know geographically where that is at. So HD6B is south of Colfax, east of Colorado Boulevard. If you were an A, you were west of Colorado Boulevard. So, welcome to our January meeting. Thank you very much for sharing your evenings with us. Initial housekeeping, we're going to have a packed agenda tonight. We have lots of announcements about people running. We have lots of announcements about reorg and all kinds of other things. Which leads me to a very important question. By a show of hands, who here would be interested if HD6 and potentially another House district join together to host a candidate forum, either mayoral or city council? Would you find that of value? Because there's going to be lots of them. There's going to be lots of things going on. Would you want one specific for this group?
Yes.
Out of all those hands that are raised, who is interested in being the chair of the candidate forum committee?
All right.
Where'd all the hands go? Hey, all right. So with that said, I'm going to get the mic. I'm going to pass it to Andrew, who's co-captain HD6A.
Good evening, everybody. As Sean said, my name is Andrew Fisher. I'm the co-captain of HD6A. Some HD6 and DPOD announcements. First, coming up on Saturday, February 4th, is the DPOD reorg. And as most of you probably know, that's when DPOD will re-elect House and Senate district officers, including all of us. At the last meeting, I invited everybody who was present, who was interested in running for a position, to just stand up, wave their hands, and introduce themselves. We have a couple more tonight. Before I call on specific people, anybody that did not introduce themselves last meeting that is potentially interested in running? Okay, I understand Sally Ann would like to make an announcement.
Hi, I was 80 last December 29th. Woo! I've been treated for bladder cancer successfully thus far since 2019. I broke my hip last spring and spent most of the summer recovering. It's part of the reason I wasn't able to give you as much support as I wanted with BAM. And I think it's time to step aside for others with more youth and energy. So I will not stand for re-election as vice chair for House District 6 this year. This will be the first time in 18 years that I will not be on the DOP Central Committee. I wish to thank all here and not here, including some of those that aren't here at all, for the support and hard work you've given over the past nearly 2 decades. And I'm sure you will continue in those following years and decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally Ann. I want to add to that standing ovation by saying that Sally Ann was a godsend this last election. She said that she didn't help us that much with Van, or at least not as much as she wanted to. She helped us plenty, and for that we are tremendously grateful. And with that, I'm going to pass the microphone to Kate, who just took a big bite of food.
So first of all, Mark is not here tonight. He's at the governor's inauguration ball. He's very excited for the musical performer, so he apologizes that he's not here. Last meeting, I didn't think I would even be at this meeting, and I also announced that I was not rerunning for 6A captain. Mark and I have chatted, and he and I are going to run together for chair and vice chair of House District 6. So the role that Sally Ann and Ann have been both in for years and years, and we appreciate their work. He and I will run for that at reorg. It's a position that is less of a time commitment, and I feel like I can still commit to that with my work schedule. So just announcing that Mark and I have decided to do that together. Yay.
All right, we have 2 candidates for DPOD countywide seats that asked to speak tonight. And the first is James. He is our current vice chair, and he is running for chair.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody. I'm James Reyes. I'm, like Andrew said, I'm the vice chair of the party. I'm currently running to be chair of the party at the February 4th reorg. And so I hope to earn your votes at that event. Just real quick, how much time do I have, by the way?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay, we can do this. Let me talk very quickly about sort of my vision and how I lead. And, you know, if there's a little time for questions, I'm happy to take those at the end. One thing that's really important for me is to talk about organizational culture and talk about things like servant leadership. And that as leaders, we have a responsibility to be servants to those that we lead. That means building people up, not breaking people down. And this is fundamental to what I would ask of all the leaders in the party. But one thing that we're not doing right now is even talking about culture. Let's talk about culture. Can we get 100% to where I think we should be? Probably not. But if we can get to 60, 70% of the way, I think we've done a great job. So let's talk about culture, let's talk about leadership, let's work on sort of our soft skills as an organization, and that will make us more successful in the work that we do as a party that is getting the vote out. So let's talk about that real quick. I'm the big planner. So we have 2 years, a 2-year cycle. This is the odd numbered year, next year is the even numbered year. That's the year that we get the vote out. And that is a presidential election. That is a huge one. So let's talk about the off year. What are we doing during the off year? We build the party. That's us. Let's reactivate any precinct organizers who may have fallen out. Let's fill in vacancies for those precincts that don't have precinct organizers. And let's execute on a plan to do this. Let's not just talk about it, let's actually have a strategy. And let's then drill into the tactics and execute on that. That is the odd numbered year. The even numbered year, then, if we've done our job as precinct organizers, then when we knock on the door, we're not a stranger, right? We're a welcome friend. And that's what we do during the even numbered years, when it's time to get the vote out. This is not something that we scramble to get done in like October or September. This is something we do all the time during the entire 2-year process. And how do we get there? What is the plan? Well, I have a vision. I have sort of an outline of what that plan should be, but I think that work needs to be done at the executive committee level. Our executive committee meetings should be much more deliberative, where we actually talk about ideas, form a plan together, and arrive at something that all the House districts have bought into, and that we can all then execute on. That is what we should be doing at that level. And we don't want to leave House districts to fend for themselves. And at the same time, we don't need to prescribe every little thing for House districts to do. But we should have a plan, and then the strategy, and the House districts execute on the tactics. And that's what those executive committee meetings should be. Collaborative, get buy-in, and lead together. That is essentially sort of my approach, and what I hope to achieve as chair. Do you want to do questions, or was that on the program?
No, that's fine. Does anyone have any
questions? Yeah, any questions or comments? All right.
It was very compelling.
Well, thank you.
No questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So again, James Reyes, February 4th reorg. I hope you all make it, and I hope to earn your vote on that day. Thank you very much.
All right, Lisa? Leah, sorry.
That's okay.
Two L names for you
That's
tonight.
all right.
Leah Payne-Dean, she is running for first vice chair. If you remember, we created a second vice chair position.
Hi y'all, I'm Leah Dean. It's nice to meet you. I'm sure you can tell I'm not from Denver, I'm from Texas. Thank you for welcoming me with open arms. My partner and I came here in August of 2021, the week before SB 8 went into effect in Texas. And as a person who had an abortion in Texas, that ban meant a lot to me and to my family. We looked forward to coming to a place where we were welcomed with open arms, and I have to say, while I don't live in 6, I love people in 6. Helen has been so welcoming to us on the executive committee, and I think it's time that we bring youth to the party. I'm 33 years old. I've been involved in politics since I was 16. My grandmother wanted me to drive her to the polls with her friends, so we went and got breakfast, we went to the polls, and she was sitting in my car, and she said, I've never done this. And I said, never done what? And she said, never voted for a Democrat before. And I looked at her and I was like, now's not the time. Get out of the car and vote for Hillary Clinton. I gotta go. But I've been involved since then. My grandmother was born before women had the right to vote, and she instilled it in me, even though we disagreed on politics and different policies within our party. She knew that my right to vote was important. And that's something that I think, coming from Texas, I really bring to the party. I grew up in a very small town where Democrats were afraid to say that they were Democrats. I am not afraid. I am here to earn your support on February 4th as first vice chair of the Democratic Party of Denver. So thank you for letting me be here tonight. I really appreciate it, and thank you for dealing with my twang. I also appreciate that. Any questions? Any questions?
Any questions for Leah?
I'm 33. I have 3 dogs. My partner's Cassidy. No?
Also very compelling. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes. The pugs always get it. Yes, ma'am.
Can you come and help me dye my hair?
So, interestingly enough, there are little cards on your table with QR codes. If you just open up your camera on your phone and scan that, you will learn that I went to the Aveda Institute in San Antonio and got my cosmetology degree. I unfortunately no longer do hair, but my license is still active, and I'd be happy to help you out. Yes?
As someone who lived in Round Rock for 15 years, what part of Texas are you all from?
Yes, so I'm from Sweetwater, which is about 6.5 hours northwest from Round Rock. We are home to the world's largest rattlesnake roundup, and if you're ever interested in attending that, I have been bit. It is not fun. And my partner Cassidy is from Houston. So we lived in Fort Worth, Texas for the last 7 years, where I served on many different levels within local politics. Thank y'all.
Claudia Woodman is our current DPOD treasurer and asked for 90 seconds to make a couple announcements.
I really mean it, 90 seconds, and I am actually, this is one announcement. I'm the outgoing DPOD treasurer because I feel like change in personnel in the party is good, and I think that other people are going to do a great job. So I'm excited to remain as a precinct organizer here in House District 6, the happiest place on earth. House District 6 has 2 sub-districts, as you probably all know. Neither sub-district currently has a finance chair. The finance chair is essentially the treasurer of the sub-district, works closely with the treasurer of the party, and is the financial glue that helps glue the sub-district to the party. It's an important job, it's a fun job, we provide training. If any of you are interested or want to know more, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to me, the current treasurer, and or any of your captains. That's it.
Wait, Claudia,
I got a question.
Oh yeah.
Sean disappointed me.
Okay, very good. Then we we only need one. I am very excited that you have stepped up. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia.
All right, thank you, Claudia. Reminder, reorg is Saturday, February 4th. We have finally determined the location. It'll be at South High School. James just mentioned sign-in will probably start at 10, and the program will get started at 11. Look forward to seeing you there. Next, we're going to do some quick legislative updates, and first I'll call on Senator Hansen.
Thank you so much. All right, well, a very good evening to everyone. We are officially off to the races at the Capitol. We got, well, I should say half the Senate and all of our representatives were sworn in, including our brand new representative, Elizabeth Epps. Congratulations. It's official now. And then we followed that up this morning with the governor's inauguration, where the constitutional officers were sworn in, and followed by a 21-gun salute, which was 38. Yeah, that's right, 38. It was deafening. But we had the howitzers on the Capitol lawn. I wanted to just provide a quick legislative update this evening, and of course answer any questions you might have. It's a different year for me, leaving the JBC for obvious reasons, and but still going to be, I think, really involved with a bunch of the big budget decisions this year. I'm going to serve on on Senate approps, and be intimately involved with a lot of the budget decisions we've got coming up. I made a couple notes for myself tonight just to make sure I didn't miss anything. You know, my first 5 bills that I'll be running this year, just to give you a sense of kind of some of the things I've been working on during the interim and have ready to introduce this week and next. Got my first bill out of the gate, will not surprise any of you, which is heavily focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving air quality in Denver. Lots of different sections to that, and happy to dive into details if folks are interested. The other one I want to make sure I mention tonight is the expansion of the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit at the state level. We know that they are the single best ways in tax code to help working families. It's a huge opportunity we have this year, and really excited to be working on that with a number of my legislative colleagues. Also have a worker protection bill that's focused on infrastructure projects and energy projects, making sure that we have worker protections in place from when we're building new energy projects or infrastructure projects. Raise your hand if you're on para. How many para members in the room, including me and our new representative? We are para members. Para this year is offering a 0% COLA.
Ooh, lovely.
0.
Lovely.
Cost of living adjustment. We have brought forward a bill to replace or try to supplement that, or to, instead of a COLA, have a tax credit that would be equivalent to what the COLA should have been. And so very excited to get that launched and help our para-retirees that are on fixed income, because 0 COLA in an 8% inflation is an 8% cut in your benefit. So that is going to be a top priority this year for me. Also have a bill that I've been working on with Helen on improving our family court system, and a lot of different aspects that we're going to be trying to tackle there. But think of the families, most of them representing themselves in divorce cases, right, pro se, in front of the judge. Not a lot of support for those litigants. Often complicated family cases that the judge is coming straight from a criminal background. In many cases don't have a lot of training in family law, so we're gonna take a hard run at trying to get that fixed. The other things I wanted to mention tonight, it's a very different budget year from what I talked about last year. We've got a situation where very little discretionary spending is on the table. I mean, I think it's going to be $3 or $5 million of discretionary spending when it comes to new legislative proposals. So it's going to be very, very low amount compared to what we did last year, which was more in the $50 million range, plus a bunch of other one-time expenditures we had because of state and federal money that had poured in because of the ups and downs of COVID. We don't have to go all the way through the history. The other thing I'm anticipating this year is a huge amount of conversation about tax credits and property tax. I sponsored the bill last year to deliver about $700 million in property tax relief. Most of that going to residential properties. Now in post-Gallagher era, you remember the discussion about Gallagher a few years ago, getting that out of the Constitution. Now we need to really figure out, okay, what's next? How do we provide some clear bumpers on the property tax system that is fair, that's equitable, and allows us to continue to fund our schools? And of course, that is the revenue source that our schools depend on. So those are some of the tough puzzles we're going to be diving into this year at the Capitol. Love to hear from you anytime, of course, about any of those bills or anything else you're seeing in the news or bills you're seeing on the website. And happy to take a couple questions if we've got time, and then turn it over to Representative Epps. Yes?
Only a small amount of discretionary fund. What's the price on the child tax credit, which I agree is a great thing?
Yeah, so we're working, the current fiscal note the combined proposal, which is EITC and CTC, is around 250 million. But it's not new spending. It would be a tax credit, right? So you're not having to take money out of the general fund. So in this case, it would reduce overall Tabor refunds in the next budget. So I think it's a way better method for spending the refunds, have it go to the working families that need it the most, instead of what we do now, which most Tabor refunds end up going disproportionately to the wealthiest families. So this is going to be a really important discussion, I think, this year.
So that would be going forward every year. We would have to have a growth in the amount of money we're collecting as a state in order to fund this.
Well, yeah, we basically, the proposal is to do a 2-year extension, expansion, not extension, expansion. And then we'd have to take a fresh look at the situation in 2 years. Yeah. Yes, sir.
The family court reform, is some of that coming out of that handwrite-list article in ProPublica? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that article. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Yeah, thank you for that, for mentioning that. All right. Well, thanks so much. Great to see you. And I am now headed off to see Mark and my wife and probably 2,000 more of our friends at the governor's inaugural ball. So with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Epps.
Representative Epps, I don't know if I've said it out loud yet. And thank you. I'm going to try to stand right here. And I'm going to thank Senator Hansen for outing me, because I've been saying all day I couldn't go to the ball because I was going to be at HD6. So if anybody asks, we were here till 10 o'clock at night. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. By way of legislative update, how many minutes do I have? Because I'll have one update, and then you can ask me questions and ask me what are we doing on housing. I'm going to tell you, I can't tell you yet because it's not my bill, but ask me next month. I want to tell you about the one that was introduced yesterday, but I really just want to thank you. I spent a long time saying yes when people asked me was I excited, and I was lying for a few months because I was just terrified, and now that it's really true. As hard as this has already been 2 days in, I anticipated that, I anticipated the work. Y'all, I have not anticipated how much fun it was going to be to be surrounded by, it really is, these folks who are really passionate about tax policy and climate and things that I'm getting to learn about and dig deep on. And our class is just an awesome group of people. And here I'm being really, really partisan and talking about the Democrats particularly. There's just too many of us, we can't fit in pictures, it's great. So yesterday, and again, I did not cry, and if someone tells you I cried, they are lying. I did not cry when I saw my name listed as a prime sponsor on HB 23-1024, which is a family resiliency bill that is personal and professional, and is a wild thing to have your neighbors let you go and work on a thing that matters so much. So that's going to be my first bill. We are underway, kind of, with our committees. It's a lot of logistics at this point. And I don't know if you heard, sir, but are there 12 committees in the House? You don't know. He's over. They don't know what we do over in the House. Anyway, I think there's 12 committees. That sounds like a good... It was forever ago in this very seat. But I say that only because while there's some 12 committees, the Judiciary Committee, one of my two, the first rounds of bills that have been read over the desk, so introduced that first reading, some 20% of them are coming to Judiciary, right? So it's going to be some long nights and a lot of good work ahead. First 5, you'll get 5 in the House. Don't say it out loud if you happen to be named Boyle and I saw you in the elevator today and so you already know the answer. But just let me know, has anybody heard in the news about another bill associated with me? Yep. So, somebody, but nobody I know here has? I think how I want to say this is, surely, don't be scared, but surely no one here expected me to win an election and get sworn in and do anything other than exactly what I promised y'all I was going to do for months on end. as it happens, and so I'm talking about a gun bill. I'm going to talk delicately for a reason that isn't about hiding the ball. It's because as a black woman, for many of my professional years, I've experienced a thing called erasure, where someone else was getting credit for my work. This is a different experience, where a colleague of mine, who does not share my demographics, but has worked hard for many, many months with deep stakeholding, and who deserves the credit for this bill, is not getting it because certain folks have found it more convenient to target me. So I'm saying that, so when you're hearing about it, before you're even considering the policy, just understand, first off, I'm down to work on this policy, and we promised we were going to talk about assault weapons. Google Illinois and assault weapons today and see what our colleagues are doing around the state. What's being signed into law, not found unconstitutional. But as you're reading it, and I know that was kind of jumping around, I just want you to know that Andrew Basenecker, our colleague out of Fort Collins, my caucus's, one of my caucus's co-whips, has been working on what the media is calling Epps' gun bill, okay? For months and months and months. And I need him to get credit for that work. We're leading on that. You're not gonna be surprised what we're working on criminal legal issues. I'm really excited about the things that are happening around family court, we will talk about offline, because there's a lot to it, but around tax policy and climate. What's coming up, when is our next meeting?
February 7th.
Okay, so by February 7th, all 5 of ours will have been in, because my last deadline is January 30th. So I'll be able to talk at more length, and I'll bring you one-pagers about those. And then I also have 2 bills that are going to be starting in the Senate, so one of which is co-sponsored with the Colorado State Patrol. And it gives, the Colorado State Patrol is as delighted as I am to just blow everybody's minds by us running a bill together. Surely you can trust that it's a mighty good law enforcement bill if we're coming together to do it. Would love to know what questions you have. I want to thank you for this opportunity. My colleagues are really awesome. I happen to have an office in the Capitol. The door is usually open because it is burning up in my office, but that also means you're welcome to stop in. And I think I might be the only freshman who has an office to myself there in the building. So stop, I mean, it's, 6 by 8. But stop in and sit on the stool with me and let's talk. What questions do you have, if any? Because that's probably right around 5 minutes.
Any questions?
What's your aide's name?
My aide's name is Kate. She was with us on the campaign. Beautiful Kate with the red hair. It was fantastic. And is exactly what I need, and she is just the best. And there's only one of her because the state pays only $20 an hour, so I'm paying the differential to pay her a thriving wage of $31.25. So we'll talk about that next session. I promised the speaker I won't bring that bill till next year. So thank you. Kate is great. You all are amazing. And I can't wait to tell you in February more updates.
What's their second committee?
Oh, it's State Affairs, and actually I have a third now on the Statutory Revision Committee. State Affairs, and I almost felt guilty about getting the 2 that were my first choice. A little bit of imposter syndrome, and like it wasn't fair that I get both. But State Affairs, and then actually the speaker did call and ask me if I would agree to take a spot on Statutory Revision, which is the dorkiest, best interim year-round committee that you read everything, and since I already send everybody unsolicited feedback on their punctuation, it seemed like a good fit for me. So, yeah, State Affairs, Judiciary, and Statutory Revision, which I could very easily see myself staying on that same set of committees all the way through. So.
All right, Representative Epps just got sworn in. We do have a couple candidates who have asked to speak tonight. They are Denver municipal candidates. We had a couple more who were supposed to come who had last-minute scheduling conflicts, so hopefully they'll join us in February. The first candidate I'd like to call up is Sarah Parody. She is running for City Council at large.
Hi, you guys. Oh.
Hi.
Hi. All right, there we go. It's really good to see you all. I see a ton of friends in the audience.
You need to be back, Ken.
We got a
Oh, there's a oh, hi, there's people on Zoom. I did not realize. This is an amazing meeting because there's a ton of people in the room and more people on video. So I'm Sarah Parody. I live up in Whittier with my little kiddos and my spouse. We've been there for a little over 10 years. And I've been a workers and civil rights attorney in Denver for about 15. And actually, the first part of that, before I started doing that work, I was at Colorado Legal Services during the foreclosure crisis. So that's the work that brought me to Denver and the work that I've done since I got here. I got kind of a quick orientation in that legal aid job to Denver's different neighborhoods and the inequities between them, because that was quite apparent from my client base. I was actually just chatting with Steve about the fact that I had a lot of clients in those days at Windsor Gardens who were facing foreclosure. And one of the things that I think about from that time, from my kind of early legal career, is that in Denver now, if you're a homeowner, and if you owned your home back at that time, like 2007, 2008, you've seen your home values skyrocket. You've earned all this wealth. And of course, that could be a problem in terms of property taxes and things like this, but it's also generational wealth. It's something you can pass on. It's something you can tap into if you have an emergency. And the folks that were coming to my office for foreclosure, for a minute, we had some of the worst foreclosure rates in the country, particularly in like Green Valley Ranch, Mont Bello, and then counties surrounding Denver. Those folks who lost their homes over a lot of times maybe 3 months of mortgage assistance that nobody wanted to provide, lost that generational wealth. And if they had just had something to get them through that tough spot, they would still be owning those homes today, and they would be worth, 3 times sometimes what they were in those days. So I think about that all the time, especially when I'm out in those same neighborhoods. Since then, I've been representing workers. Lots of anti-discrimination, anti-retaliation, worker safety is really important to me. I come from a mining town in southwest Wyoming where we had lots of occupational accidents and deaths, and so those are some of my very early memories and something that has always been important to me. I've represented farm workers on the Western Slope. I've represented the folks that built that big tall condo building at 18th and Broadway. That intersection was closed forever. The drywallers on that building were not getting paid for all their hours or any overtime, and they were working 60 and 80-hour weeks through the winter. We got 200 of them paid about $1 million in that case. And I've done a lot of cases like that, a lot of invisible disability discrimination, and then a ton of work by the side of the LGBTQ community, particularly around like healthcare discrimination, which has been my great honor. So. My transition into doing policy work, I usually don't mention this directly, but since Helen Shreves is here, I have to, came partly because of an organization called the Colorado Women's Bar Association, which is a bunch of lady attorneys who get together and, we sort of radicalize people, to be honest. Everybody in the legal community pays their dues, and then a small club of us go into the legislature and do policy work. So we wrote the Colorado Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. That started out as a Word document on my computer, and I'm very proud of it, especially the part where employers have to post salary ranges in job listings, which has been picked up now in like 10 jurisdictions across the country. We did it here first. I've been involved in lots of efforts to lift wages, and then some other things around like healthcare policy and various other sorts of pieces of economic security. So here's what I will tell you about City Council. I have become obsessed with housing. I can talk about that until the cows come home. Someone asked me a question about it and we'll talk about it. But mostly what I want you all to know is that like I am sort of done with the part of my life where I get intimidated by suits and money and someone who thinks they're smart or has a lot of degrees. That stuff does not scare me. I am pretty firm in my sort of policy ideas. I love the people in this city. I love the city of Denver. I share a little bit of the story that you guys heard from Leah, where kids from surrounding states end up in Denver because it is a safer, more progressive, more welcoming place to be. I hear that story all the time in Denver, and I think that's always been part of our history ever since folks coming up here fleeing Jim Crow. That's like who we are as a city. We have to stay affordable and livable and open for that to remain true. I have no idea. I was going to make Representative Epps keep time for me, but I failed to do that. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, any questions for Sarah?
Yeah, this is sort of a challenging question. You said you're very firm on policy ideas. I would turn around. Are you more firm on outcomes and open to different ways of getting there, or firm on the ways of getting there?
I'm getting good notes from the audience. Thank you. No, what I mean by that is that like I'm not going to get swayed by, for example, you're in government, you get lobbied quite a bit. You get sort of given what can be very misleading fact sheets and all of this. I'm at a point where I'm not going to be easily persuaded by those sort of like glossy half-truths, right? So I guess when I say policy ideas, what I mean is values. Thank you for that.
I will ask you about housing. What do you think the top 3 interventions we need at this point are?
Yeah, I think that the city needs to be investing quite a bit more in housing that it continues to own over time, because market-based incentives are, they're hard to get right into the future. And we've done those. We've done the expanding housing affordability policy, and I think at this point we're much better off if we own housing, you know, in perpetuity. We can continue to run the policy that's correct through that housing. We can build it to good climate standards. We can adjust what we're using that housing for, depending on the needs of the city and its population at that time. And I think that's very realistic for Denver to do. I've spent a lot of time with Shannon Hoffman looking at funding mechanisms to make that a reality. So we would, and a piece of that I think is important is that housing should be mixed income, because then it pays for its own maintenance over the years. You don't end up with sort of ghettoization and stigmatization and public disinvestment over time. And that also gives you a funding stream that you can like run a bond on, create a self-perpetuating housing fund for years to come. So that's, you asked me for like, how many was I supposed to give? Tenants' rights are really important in Denver. Like, there's a huge degree of stability that comes from folks not being able to be evicted on really short notice. So a piece of that would be lobbying the state to lift the ban on rent stabilization. No. Steve.
We keep putting out money because of police abusing their authority. And that's, you know, something that just keeps coming back and back and back. So you're going to be new in this job. I don't know, do you have any ideas on how we can finally get to the point where we don't have to keep paying out for lawsuits?
Yeah, and I will say a few of those have come to my firm over the years. So, no, it's outrageous. Here's a short story that I have about that. I had a civil rights case on behalf of a family of brothers in Globeville against the Denver police, where the police came in, punched the door down on a totally invalid warrant, and beat up these young teenage brothers. They literally have a family band. They're like the nicest guys. Not that it matters. That shouldn't happen to anybody. But they ended up going to trial in their case. They won. The city pursued an appeal. The city lost the appeal. That was the part of the case that I handled. So we spent all this money defending these cops, paying out the verdict, paying for the appeal. Last year, so this was maybe 5 years ago, last year my spouse joined a firm that handles this kind of work. He sent me an email saying, oh look, my partner's just got this great verdict. I'm reading about it. It's the same cop. So that same officer shot someone in the back 5 years later, still on the force, had gotten an award in the interim, hadn't been fired. It's ridiculous. I have a lot of fairly concrete ideas about reforming police discipline and the transparency of police records, which takes some work. And then in addition to that, I think we need to look seriously at banning no-knock warrants. And then I think we need to look really heavily at our municipal criminal code, which right now primarily criminalizes poverty and carries heavier sentences than a lot of similar offenses under state law. So it's what gets used to sort of, again, criminalize poverty, keep people in this rotation through the jail instead of getting help and treatment, which is what we should be investing that money.
Any more questions?
What's happening with the Cedar Run apartments?
I do not know.
Okay.
Does anyone know? What's happening with the Cedar Run apartments?
No, but I love somebody who says I don't know.
That would be a hard one to fake. Yeah, no, we should talk more about that and we'll find out.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
All right, a couple meetings ago, we had the then 2 candidates for City Council District 10, Councilmember Hines, who's running for re-election, and Shannon Hoffman, who's challenging him. We have a third candidate who's going to speak to us tonight. It is Noah Kaplan.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. I am very happy to be here. My name is Noah Kaplan. I'm running for City Council. Oh, there's a camera here, that's right, virtual crowd, hello. My name is Noah Kaplan, running for City Council to represent District 10. Born and raised here in the city. I grew up in Park Hill. I attended East High School. My parents were public defenders, and I grew up with a lot of conversation around our dinner table around issues of justice, matters of due process, and the importance of being active participants in crafting a community and a democracy that serves everybody, and the vigilance and activity that's required to ensure that that occurs. And that was the foundation with which I used to direct the rest of my life. And I've spent my time as a resident of this city, the city that I love, trying to participate as much as possible in as many different ways as possible in ensuring that the city cares for its citizens, especially those who may otherwise be marginalized or exploited, especially by the state. So that is the way in which I have operated. And in pursuit of those values, I attended CSU and returned to East High School to teach at my alma mater, and ran their speech and debate program for the past 6 years, which was a great honor. It was a program that I was a part of as a student. It gave me the skills and confidence to advocate for myself and others, and it was a real dream come true to be able to give back to my community in that way. There we cultivated a community every year, 200 kids and their families, from varied backgrounds, lots of different experiences, and you really learn about the complexity of identity here in the city of Denver. And I was very proud to get to cultivate a community of people focused on civil discourse, focused on exploring issues, understanding the complexity of the problems that face our world, and building a community that supported one another in those efforts. And I'm still involved with that program. I'm still coaching students after school. And it was a great honor to do that. Unfortunately, we don't pay teachers very well in this city, and that is a huge problem. When essential workers like teachers, like librarians, like first responders, service providers, even our service industry workers, when those folks can't afford to live in the city in which they work, everybody suffers. I was seeing teachers leave the profession because they couldn't afford to build lives and families in this city. I saw my own opportunity to build a life and a family and a path to homeownership start to go away. After 7 years working at that school, I was no closer to owning a home. I was no closer to being able to build that kind of financial stability. So I did what a lot of teachers do. I started gigging. I started working in other places. I have worked in the service industry here. I've worked in waste management, collecting the city's waste. I have most primarily worked as a journalist. That's where my training is. I'm an English major. So I worked for Denver Westward, and I was a freelance reporter, and I covered local politics. I covered the unhoused crisis in the city, and most primarily I covered issues of criminal and social justice, following the story in the fight for accountability in the death of Elijah McClain. I covered that story for almost 2 years. And it was an essential story and another part of what I felt like my responsibility to leverage my talents, my sensibility, and my gifts in order to ensure that we are protecting people and ensuring we're holding especially state actors accountable for not doing harm in our community and doing what needs to be done to ensure people are safe and taken care of. I have a host of priorities. I'm learning a lot. I'm not coming from a political space. So in the past several months, I've spent a lot of time learning and listening. I am thrilled to have a really nuanced platform that tries to really look at the complexity of these problems and take a really balanced look at how we address them in a comprehensive way. When we're talking about homelessness, when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about affordability, climate action, these are intersectional problems. They all relate and intersect with one another. And if we're going to address any of them, we need to be thoughtful, patient, and we need to build broad coalitions of support. And that is what I intend to do. I am very excited, I am energized and thrilled. My experience as a storyteller, I think, is one of the greatest assets a council person can have. We're talking about connective tissue inside the city. We're talking about storytelling. We're talking about celebrating our successes, building on the challenges that we have, and using those as opportunities to unite people, to bring people together. And my priorities, briefly, because I'm not going to have time to dig in all the way, and I'm happy to take questions, but public safety and policing. We have to hold state actors accountable when things go wrong. And we need to make sure that everybody has a law enforcement that they trust to call when things go wrong, and that we are addressing the underlying causes of crime, and not just responding to each individual issue or each individual crisis. That's not the solution to the problem. We know that criminalization does not prevent crime. Affordability, and I know I'm going over time, so I'm going to do this really quick. Housing affordability, homelessness. I've been a mutual aid worker for the past several years, learning the stories of our unhoused neighbors. and trying to understand the complex confluence of problems that lead people on the street, keep people on the street. Education. The city needs to take more responsibility for supporting students. The city has largely abdicated its responsibility for caring for our students at the city door, or excuse me, at the schoolhouse door. We have a Department of Child Affairs, we have a Department of After-School Programming. We got to be investing in that, supporting families, making sure that kids have the kinds of opportunities that they have in other places. Vocational training, speech and debate programs should be everywhere in the city, not just at East High School. And there's a handful of other things I'd love to support and talk about. Climate action and sustainability. If you read Denver Westward a couple weeks ago, I wrote a story about how we can actually move the needle on organic waste diversion. And there's a lot that needs to be done. We need street level understanding of these issues, and I think I'm your guy.
Questions for Noah? I'll start out.
David, your dad?
David Kaplan is my father.
Kaplan of the law firm?
He is no longer a partner of a law firm, but
Okay.
he was the state public defender when I was a kid.
Got it. Question for you. What is one policy the city is spending money on right now that you don't think is working, and how would you reallocate that money?
That's a good question. The city, well, you know, I think that we could certainly use I think we need to be smarter with the way that we manage waste in this city. I think that, Dottie, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, has done a lot of remarkable things, but I do think that we need to be more efficient with the way that we manage city waste. I think that one of the things that we can do, we spend a lot of money shipping our waste to off 50, 60 miles outside the city, and there are ways that we can do that with much more integrity and to do it in a way that closes waste loops and waste cycles. And I think if we make that adjustment, we can save money, we can capture carbon, we can lower the city's waste emissions, and we can also greenify the city, and we can also make sure that the city captures carbon and cools the city. Those are things that we can all do with changing the way that we divert waste.
Any other questions for Noah? Yes.
There was just a study that came out from I can't remember the university, on homelessness. And it looked at all the major cities in this United States, and I think some in Europe. And it went through every 5-year study on it, every factor, alcoholism, drug use, mental illness, everything. And it came down to there was one issue:
Cost of housing.
affordable housing. All those other things don't matter. Now, we can't build these huge structures like, remember, in the Bronx till they tore them down. What is your thoughts about a type of housing that would work?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think Sarah Parody brought up some really important points. I mean, having property and land trusts that keep ownership in a public place that allow us to control the cost of housing, doing much more investment in that process, I think, is a really smart solution. I also think that we have a great partner in the DHA, which is the Denver Housing Authority, which has done remarkable things. I just met with a fantastic designer who's worked on DHA housing projects named Joe Poli. This is a man who is a designer and an architect who works privately. Building those kinds of partnerships, there is a lot of goodwill and people in the developer space. We have to identify the folks who want to work with the city to address these issues, and the partnership between DHA and these types of designers and architects to build housing that is affordable and can be managed by the Denver Housing Authority is an important step to ensure that we can maintain the cost of housing and ensure that that's something that we can do. I want to acknowledge also that there is a confluence of issues. I spend Sundays doing outreach to the unhoused community, and I do know that there are individuals who receive housing, and because of lack of community, because of social isolation, because of mental health challenges and addiction, that those are things that contribute to landing people back on the street. And I do think that it is very, very important that we build comprehensive wraparound services. The hotel motel acquisition, I think, is a really important transitional step that gives permanent housing to the unhoused to ensure that they gain the kind of case management support. I mean, it is hard enough for me to navigate renewing my license in the event that I really need to do that. For somebody who doesn't have access to a computer and doesn't have access to, or doesn't maybe understand how to navigate state or city bureaucracy, those are obstacles to getting jobs. Those are obstacles to getting housing. And working to make sure that you know, the criminalization of some of these instances where individuals end up criminalized with criminal records that prevent them for applying for certain housing is important. So revising that municipal code, I also would 100% support. But absolutely, partner with the DHA, I think, is a really big one. They've done great work off of 10th and Mariposa to make sure that we're building mixed-use housing that doesn't build housing projects that isolate poverty, but really integrate our community and make sure that people feel like they're a part of the city and not just being abdicated to, like put aside, cast away. All together now is my motto. I want to bring the city together. I think that this is a progressive, compassionate place, and we got to make sure we're acknowledging our strengths.
Yeah, just a quick question. What's your position on the Park Hill Golf Course, and why is it that your position is that?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I was waiting for that question. I'm sure I was going to get it. I toured the Park Hill Golf Course. I met with the folks who have the plans to develop it. And to be honest, I went in very, very skeptical. But my sense is that we have to balance a lot of interests in this city. We have a housing shortage, and we have to make sure that we're building housing that's affordable. And the level of locked-in affordable units that development is going to add to our city is substantial. And it preserves, you know, would be the 4th largest green space in the city limits. And I think that the interests of the city, I think that they're doing a good job, to be honest. I do. I believe in the project, and I think that it should be something that the city considers. Now, I understand that as somebody potentially elected to office, I will have more responsibility to make sure that we're paying attention and holding developers accountable for delivering on their promises. But if we are going to be serious about adding to the supply of housing, there's an opportunity that isn't to be missed. And I also think that we can preserve the green space. You know, there's a tree farm that's already been installed in that area. The types of things that we want to see in this city, lots of different interests involved, and that's a space where the city can come together. So I believe in the project. Yeah.
So you're aware that it's going to be a metropolitan taxing district, that the developer is not going to pay for the infrastructure, but the residents there will pay for it?
Yeah.
I'm just curious that if you're aware of how that operates.
Yeah, I think I probably have a little bit more to learn about that. My opinion on this is, you know, this is where I stand right now. I'm more than happy to receive information, and that adjustment, I may make an adjustment. But as of now, balancing the interests of the city, making sure that we have green spaces, while also making sure that we're increasing the number of affordable units in the city in a neighborhood that has traditionally, you know, potentially been neglected at times. I think it's important that we add to those units and that we make sure that we're able to balance the varying interests of the city. And I think the project does that. How we go about paying for the infrastructure is definitely something I need to learn more about.
Yeah, because it passes it on to the residents that are living there.
Yeah.
So it's not, in some cases, it's an untenable, will force people into foreclosure, and if taxes keep going up, people can't afford to live there.
Yeah, I mean, that.
It's completely outside of the typical taxing structure. So that developer isn't gonna pay much, it's a net gain for the developer, they don't have to pay the infrastructure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, you know, and I would love to have that information sent. Please make sure that, yeah, I would love to have more information on that, because that's an important obstacle, and we got to make sure we understand how things are being paid for.
I'm going to interject there and say thank you. If you have further questions for Noah, please talk to him after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We usually run long at this meeting. It is 7:55, so we will give you 5 minutes of your time back. Thanks so much for coming out. I know it's kind of a cold, dreary January evening. Last thing, if you're interested in helping us with a Denver Municipal Candidate Forum, please either approach us after the meeting or send us an email, hd6@denverdemocrats.org. Thank you all very much.
Good job.